Hi, so welcome back to the new normal. And we're back and it's really hot all over the world apparently, because we are coming from two different locations. Yeah, so my name is Ryan, and if you're joining us for the first time for the new normal, we started this now a little over a year ago. And at the time we wanted to talk about, what might be in the new world kind of emerging from the pandemic, because that was going to end in just 6 months, and it did not. And here we are.
Sure didn't.
A bit over 12 months later, and kind of seeing that light at the end of the tunnel now. So as we went on, we talked about trends, we talked about small businesses, we talked about the way things were changing. We also then began to delve a bit more into well-being, personal well-being, mental well-being. And that's kind of encompasses the conversations that we take on. So my name is Ryan, and I am a co-owner of CoMotion Spaces in Hamilton, Ontario, a co-working space company. And of course we have Brad, and I'll turn it to you, Brad.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Today, I'm Brad. I am the president and lead creative at Jet Propelled, full service marketing agency, and have been ecstatic at the opportunity to be able to run this speaker series with you, Ryan, for over a year now. And I often say that, I feel like, we may get more out of these conversations ourselves. It's kind of, in some ways it can be a little bit of a selfish pursuit because we get to talk to all these incredible people, and just ask them all these questions, these burning questions that we have for them. And today is no exception. I'm really very excited to be able to introduce Adrianne. Adrianne is co-founder of Bodhi Surf and Yoga Camp, which is a B Corp certified. And if anybody has gone through the process for B Corp certification, man, it's hard. So that is a huge feather in your cap. So they're B Corp certified and 1% for the Planet member tourism destination in Bahia Ballena, Costa Rica. I just started Spanish lessons today, and I realized I've been pronouncing Ballena incorrectly as Ballena, and it's Ballena. And so I'm going to get better at that. Adrianne is passionate about traveling, of course. Originally from Canada, or were you born and raised in Canada and then came to Costa Rica?
I was, yeah. I'm from there, born in Vancouver. And, I was there. I did my mandatory 18 years and then I was out.
Awesome. And so obviously passionate about traveling, surfing, storytelling, and corporate social and environmental responsibility, all of which she has woven into her various roles at Bodhi Surf and Yoga. And in her free time, Adrianne loves to be active and in the outdoors, read and hang out with her friends and her cats. But what it doesn't say in your bio here is that you are a true warrior. Nobody on the, Brian doesn't know this, but how long was it ago that you had that surfing accident with the leg injury?
My fincident, so that happened. My fincident, the infamous fincident. It was the first week of January. So I went into, 2020 started in 2019 and it has carried on into 2021. But I was like, beginning of 2021, like this is going to be my year. And then the first notable thing I did was put a fin pretty deeply into my leg, which if you've seen surf fins, you can imagine it wasn't great. It required a lot of stitches and then about 4 or 5 months almost out of the water. So that was a big bummer. But yeah, we're back. We're back, baby.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you're back.
That's horrible.
Rocking it. So here's the thing that makes that so much crazier. And this was because we didn't really know each other that well back then. Like I knew of you. And then my first really deep sort of introduction to you was you posting about the fincident, and you have this like deep gash in your leg, like horrifying injury, and you're just like taking pictures like, hey, pura vida, it's all good, like this is what happens. And I'm just like, holy shit, this woman is tough as fucking nails. In
retrospect, I might have been in shock. There's some funny back end about that, which is I was so mad at myself because it was really dumb, and I think maybe after any kind of injury, because it can happen in a split second, right? And, I am an experienced water woman. So it was an extra bummer because you're kind of like, oh, this is so stupid. How, like, what was it? And you're going over it again and again and again in your mind, especially as you're laid up in bed after the fact. But yeah, I might have been in a little bit of shock, but I handled it like pretty well. I think my shock state is actually just like the extra handling of everything, So, but I was like, I just remember I was like pretty like bossy in the like emergency room. I was like, I'd like to put on my own music. Is that okay? And like the doctor was like, sure. So I had some like Drake, Laugh Now, Cry Later, which was really, kind of. And then I was like, after I was like, can I go have a beer? And the doctor was like, what? Like, it'll be my last one. He was like, sure, I guess. So we did. I like hobbled off. We went and got lunch. I had two friends that had to take me up there, and I just felt really bad. I was like, I'm ruining your Sunday. They were like, don't worry about us. But I was like, let me buy you lunch, and a beer. But yeah.
Wow.
It was
That's
fine.
incredible.
It wasn't that painful. Like I know it looked really bad, and I mean it was
really
bad,
terrible.
It wasn't that painful actually.
I can't overstate how awful that injury was.
Yeah, we might have to I might send you some photos for context in case anyone wants to see. No, I recently got stung in the face with a Medusa jellyfish, and I'm telling you that was worse. So
yeah,
I know it's not my year.
Very painful. No,
that sounds horrible.
You know what? We a lot of us often talk about character building times in our life, character building moments. That's actually, so I mean, this is a great lead into tying it into new normal. We like to talk about our business communities and the challenges and things that pose a threat to our industry and how we can turn those into pluses and that kind of thing. And I mean, certainly on a personal level with injuries like that, with things that have challenged you that way, and then on top of that with the pandemic and being the owner of a tourism business, these are things that I can say personally from being able to speak with you and the rest of the team at Bodhi, have definitely seen you rise to the occasion and become stronger as a team and become more resilient. And more, I would say, even more dedicated to the path that you're on.
Totally.
Can you talk about how the relation between some of these personal challenges and professional challenges and how they maybe have helped each other, in building resilience?
Yeah, I mean, I remember reading at one point. I think it was Eckhart Tolle. I don't really know how to say his name. I don't think anyone.
I think that's right. I think it's Eckhart Tolle. Yeah.
This ish. But I remember he had some interesting analogies about it's kind of like the ascension, right? And it's just that it's the best of our society, the best of in nature. Everything is created under challenging conditions, and we continue to ascend as we the ascension, that there's a reason that it's uphill, right? Like it's hard, that path is difficult. It's easier to just walk on a flat surface, but you don't get to see as much, you don't get as high, you don't get that perspective. So I mean, that's like a flowery way of saying that. Yeah, I think trial and struggle are uniquely, almost the only ways to get really good at your craft, to get better as a person, as a business. You really are able to see, what you're capable of in those moments of challenge. I don't think for me anyways, nothing has ever been more true than that. And I was like, honestly, up until a couple of years ago, I can say very, very confidently that I hadn't had much challenge. Like, it's not that everything was always super easy, but I was never super challenged, I don't think. Not really, not in this way. This is
a new muscle that you're learning to.
Yeah. And it's going back to the surf analogy we talk about, and if anyone's ever surfed, and I'm not really speaking very highly of surfing today, I'm sorry, everyone. It is my passion, and we hopefully will have some good stories to share about it. But, there's a moment when you're surfing, when you're what we're calling the impact zone. This is where the waves are constantly breaking, and it's a difficult place to be, This
is the place where your life flashes before your eyes.
Well, yeah, because it's also, you're tired, you're out of your element, you can't really touch here, but you're also not out past the waves. It's just, and it's relentless, So these last couple of years have definitely felt like that. It's just been one thing after another, personally and professionally for me. And it was interesting because I think at the halfway point, like I felt like this, almost like this give up, which I think is normal in the impact zone. Where you're like, I don't know if I genuinely don't know if I can do this. Like, I just don't. Well, I don't even know if it's physically possible.
So this is unique because literally, what was it, 2 weeks ago, you and I were about 20 feet apart from each other in the impact zone. And I was very much that deer in headlights, like I'm gonna die here. And you had this incredible, I've actually told the story a couple of times because I thought that your calm, centered control voice took over. And I thought it was that, okay,
Brad, come on, Brad, come.
We're going to talk about something right now. It might freak you out. You're going to be fine. But what I need you to do is swim for your life in that direction. And it was just like, I just remember being like, what?
She sounds calm, but she's also telling me something alarming. Yeah, no, totally. And it's a very difficult place to be. And like, midway point through all of this, I did feel that for sure at numerous moments, but you dig deep in yourself and, as a team, speaking about Bodhi and what we've had to do, we dug deep together, and there were way difficult moments. But it was weird because it's almost like you kind of get used to it a little bit, or you get stronger. Maybe, both of those things are true. And then you realize, what? This may never end, this impact zone. Hopefully it does, but maybe it won't. And if it doesn't, we're okay. I'm okay. Like, we're going to get breaths when we can. We're going to, shake it out when we can. And we're going to just keep going, because that's what you have to do. So,
yeah.
Sometimes you go sit on the beach for a second too, maybe, and just like chill for a minute, and then you go back out.
Yeah. There.
I'm interested as to, so when you talk about the digging deep and the experience across the past couple of years, and half of my pandemic experience was still in the travel tourism industry, and then the other half has not been because of some of the challenges that we face. So what did you do? How did you begin to approach it to go through? Like, what are you proud of coming out of it? What were the roses as opposed to the thorns?
The thorns, yeah. Well, basically what ended up so the biggest thing that I can say that I'm proud of professionally was the decision, the unanimous decision we had as ownership. And this was about 2 days into the pandemic. And we had our finger on the pulse of it, I'd say. Like, we felt this was going to be big. Like, I think a lot of people might not have. Travis, my business partner, is incredibly visionary, and he has a very unique skill of being able to see into the future, kind of weirdly. And I didn't want to believe it, but I also trust his judgment a lot. And he was like, this is going to be big and this is going to affect us for sure, 100%. This could be years. And I remember being like, no, not like, no, but like, no, I hate that you said that, because now I have to like consider that as an option. But anyways, yeah, in those first like very scrambly and shambly few days, which here was like pretty much after about I think it was about after the 15th or so of March, where things like went into a pretty deep dive very fast. We were like, what do we do with all this staff? We had just created, like, we'd gone through a major restructuring of the company in 2019, the whole year. And then for the 2019-2020 season, we had our biggest staff ever. In that, as you guys know, as business owners, like, that's a lot of weight on your shoulders, right? And so before, we'd been pretty agile because there's mostly just the ownership team. And like, as also you would know as business owners, like, that you're sometimes the last to be paid, right? So, but it made us more agile, that all the money could go to other things. But when you have staff, you can't do that. You can't ask them not to be paid, right?
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, so we ended up deciding really early on that we were going to let no one go. We were getting through this. Basically, like, there was another side. It might be a moving target, but there was, we were going to bridge this gap, and we were going to do it with our full staff. So that's, to me, and we did, like, people ended up leaving. It was of their own accord, but we didn't let anyone go. We didn't say like, hey, you're on your own, because for me, like, as a B Corp company, and just, and every industry is different, but I thought to myself, we are smart, we are capable, we have a great network, we are going to utilize it, and we are going to go sink or float as a unit, And so for me, that was it. Like that was it, you know, there were a lot of ways that we made that happen that I'm also proud of, like the actual brass tacks of it. But it was it was a real unanimous, like everyone busted their thumbs. And
you can say us.
okay, I wasn't sure. And so okay, good, for the next time. So that to me was like the most cool thing, you know, like we rose to the occasion, and I'm very proud of that.
That's awesome. No, I mean, and that's a great kind of resolution to make at the outset, and you make a commitment, and then you go through just figuring out, okay, how are we going to abide by this then? Yeah.
Well, I'm reading a book right now on kind of like manifestation, and in this specific case, it's about like money, because I've just never like thought about money, and it's apparently like money and politics and religion. These are things that we don't really like to talk about, think about, whatever, right? Because they're weird subjects, and we have like weirdness from our, you know, our past, our families, the way we were raised, etc. But yeah, just this idea that you make a commitment, and it might seem even like wild and out there, but once you do make that commitment, like that's the sort of the goal and the horizon that you're looking towards. And I like that, because like versus like, oh, let's play it by ear, you know, I was always kind of a play it by ear person, but the whole play it by ear just means you don't have necessarily like this intentionality behind everything that you do, you know, it's kind of like, and then I just feel like you're at the whim of your emotions more about, or like little things that could happen, versus kind of having like, because that's always, there's going to be good days and bad days, right? So if you're kind of playing it by ear, then on the good days you might make a decision like, we're letting everyone go, or sorry, on the bad days, right? And so like instead of that, like to have a kind of long-term game plan, still be able to be open to be flexible, because life is life, but kind of knowing like, hey, we've made this commitment and we're sticking to that.
Yep.
Yeah. And no, Brad, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and having a little bit of, you know, like a healthy amount of pressure behind you is, you know, is a good thing, right? So that accountability to your word, that accountability to your purpose that you've declared with people, right? Is
yeah. And that's the manifestation concept, which like you know, it's a little woo for me, but the way at least this book that I'm reading right now describes it is, it makes all the sense in the world. You kind of like, we as humans can rise to the occasion, like we do it all the time. You paint yourself into a corner and you will find a way out, you know. But if you never do that, if you never make those commitments, then you maybe don't have to do that, and then you don't, you know. So I think that that's the whole point, is making like big, hairy, audacious goals and then working towards them, you know.
I think I read, what was it? I can't remember the title. It's one of those like ass kicker books, or like I will teach you to kick ass, or something like that. But yeah, they talk about that idea of, first of all, those ingrained conceptions about money or about politics, things like that, and how you treat it, and what's your view on money, and what's your view on how you go about earning it or view it. And then the idea that like, if you do want to do something, if you make a commitment to something and you're serious about it, that you do find the ways to do it. Like at the outset, like right now, if I made a commitment to something, it's not like I can just say, and this is how I'll fulfill that commitment. It's about, as you go, because you've put that lens on, you start to prioritize that commitment, and you begin to build out kind of from the background.
And you see opportunities, right? That's the other thing. You see opportunities.
Oh, because you have to.
Because you have to, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. It's funny. That reminds me, like going back to high school days, and I remember playing music like since I was 5 years old, and being in music in high school, where you're preparing to go to post-secondary school and figuring out what you're going to do with your life. You know, many people in my classes with me who were far better musicians than I ever was, or ever could be. And anytime I talk to them, I'm like, well, you know, surely you're going to, you know, go to school for this, and you're going to pursue this, and this is going to be your career. And almost all of them said, no, I'm going to do this other thing. You know, this is just, you know, something that I do. I need to have like a real thing, or I need to have something as a backup, or whatever it was. And for me, I wasn't nearly as proficient or, you know, successful or as good as they were. But I didn't have a backup. I was like, this is what I'm going to do. Like, I'm committed to it. This is, you know, I have to find these opportunities and all that kind of stuff. And that's how, you know, certain opportunities came up for me. That's how I ended up being a signed musician with Sony Music, right? It wasn't because I was the best musician in the class. I was very middle of the road, but I just made that declaration, you know, and I said, no, this is what I'm going to do. And that's where you put that pressure on yourself, and you have to look for those opportunities, and that's all you got, you know?
Well, that's the grit concept too, right? I don't know if you guys read that book. It was a pretty good one. It came out a couple of years ago, but it was like, it's not always the best. It's not always the best ones that make it to the Olympics, you know, as Fortune, whatever, 500 CEOs. It's the people that are like, I'm doing it. Like, I'm going to figure out a way to do this. I'm just not going to give up, you know, like impact
that's
zone
something
way.
we haven't really, 100%. You know, you're going to, you know, regardless of how much, you know, the ocean kicked your ass, or no matter how much the pandemic kicked your ass, it's like the only way you fail is if you stop taking one foot and putting it in front of the other. Right. And that's a personal decision. That's not no outside factor. And that's something we haven't really talked about, is grit and determination in this series. I don't think we've really touched on that at all, but often, and I think is the case with everybody on this call, you know, it's obviously, you know, you're skilled and you're capable and you have experience in all these different things. But there are probably people out there who can do what we do better than us. But we are so committed and so passionate about what it is that we do, you know, that one foot in front of the other doesn't stop until we decide it stops. You know, I think you and the Bodhi are a classic example of that.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, we get asked this question a lot. This is going to take it on from a different subject, but we can, whatever, circle back to it. But yeah, like a lot of people are like, oh, how did you guys end up, you know, like just living this dream life, you know? And it's kind of like, well, you do, like, you know, it's definitely like an ability to seize opportunities as they come up. It's definitely amount of risk taking, you know, to like move to a foreign country or whatever. But it's also like, there's like unglamorous components to everything, right? It's a lot of hard work. And I think that we as people, we put or idolize somehow the people that have these lives that we wish we could have. But, you know, I do think that the amount of effort it takes for anyone who's proficient in their field, like, is the part that maybe doesn't get talked about as much, you know? But yeah, it's definitely like an unwavering kind of commitment to the thing, whatever the thing may be.
Yeah, and how durable are you?
Yeah.
You know? I wonder. So you were talking about, you know, early on in the pandemic, as a team, you made the decision and declaration. You know, we're going to do this. We're going to face this head on. I'd like to hear from you. What sort of things did you work on as a team to either cut overhead or increase efficiencies, or whatever tactic or technique you used to keep things together and keep things going so that you could? What things were you able to do during that time that you now feel are worthwhile carrying on beyond a pandemic, that have just made the business a better running business?
Yeah, I mean, I think, well, there's a few different ways we could look at this, but I mean, and full disclosure, like, we kept everyone on staff. We couldn't pay everyone the same exact amount that we were paying them. So we made up for it in other ways. Like with some of the staff, we, for example, we paid them in food and lodging, you know, these kinds of things, right?
Yeah. That's a great example.
Someone was an unpaid intern and started getting paid in the pandemic time, when we were all laughing. We're like, this is probably the only case where this is happening. But yeah, so everyone had to have reduced hours and so on, right? And so that was, everyone was okay with that. We kind of talked and assessed everyone's situation, and figured out, you know, how and what we could do so that everyone was making it, everyone was eating, everyone was taken care of, everyone had a job, everyone had the benefits, whatever, right? How did we make that happen? Because yeah, we went from, like, you know, making X amount per month to zero, like off the cliff, right? There wasn't any more money coming in, you know? And so whatever we had was like billing each month, right? With this commitment to keep the whole staff on site, keep the place running. Like, we kept everything running. We continued, I think, even paying the gardeners, the pool people, whatever, right? Because we were like, at any point, you know, we could be back, and in which case we need to be ready for that.
Oh, how naive.
We can't let it go back to the jungle. Yeah. And then what we ended up doing is like, I think that we just decided that this was going to be a time to complete a lot of projects that we wanted to have completed. And we just didn't have time because we were fully operational. So we took a lot of what we do and put it online. Our mission has the word educate in it, to educate, inspire, and empower. And so we thought to ourselves, I mean, this wasn't just like a money-making ploy either. This was like, how can we be of service to, like, we would talk to people, guests of ours or friends, and they'd be locked in their, window, or not windowless, but like couldn't even see the sky, New York apartments. And so we tried to check in with our network too, and our people, right? And just say, how are you? What do you need?
Mm-hmm.
But we ended up, basically like wanting to, you can't come to us, we're coming to you. That's what we're doing. So like all the things that we do here at Bodhi. The one thing that was really cool and I think like unexpected was the cookbook. So for years, people had been asking us for this, do a Bodhi cookbook. Like, when were we going to do a Bodhi cookbook? We're all like running around, going to the beach, this, that, taking care of people. Like, we didn't have time to create a cookbook. So between March 20th and April 1st, and there was literally like, we had a writer, editor, we had like a producer, we had photographers, we created a whole video. And we put out this like 60-page cookbook with all the recipes from myself, from our other head cook, from Pilar, from everyone had a part in it. And that was the part that made it really, really cool. It was like a group project. And like people were like, we were working till 11 p.m. like editing and getting the final edit. And it was like, we turned into like this like production machine. So we did that, the cookbook, the cookbook ended up generating enough money to last us a couple months too. Like it just blew up and we had no idea. And because it was like, hey, donate. The donations are keeping the staff, employed. And you get this really sick PDF ebook, right? We couldn't obviously print it out for everyone, but I remember when the email went out and like we just started seeing all these donations coming in. It was crazy. And we were actually at that point, because we'd been working like pretty much nonstop for that week and a half, which is funny because I feel like everyone handles things differently. And like we are like there's like the high functioning anxiety people, and like that's all of us here. I think like we're like, you can go under the covers, and some people do that, and it's like a recognized way that some people deal with anxiety, and others are just like, I'm not going to sleep, So that was us. And anyways, but I remember at this moment we were in the pool, like we'd done everything we could do. It went out and we were sitting there, another donation came in, and it just felt so amazing, like it was just basically like it was validating that people cared, about us and like wanted to see us succeed. But also we knew that we were giving, and then people would like write us like, oh, trying this recipe today, and they'd send us photos, and it was so cool. So that part was really neat. And then later on, Maya, Travis and Pilar, my business partner's daughter, like a couple months in, she was so inspired by that. She created a vegetarian cookbook for kids. And so this was like, because she's homeschooling too. So she ended up doing this as a project. Yeah. We did so many different things. We started doing yoga videos, which was like the birth of like live and pre-recorded of what is now the Bodhi online membership program. So that was a residual thing, definitely, like this online membership program where we were like, the world is changing, and there, this ability to sort of reach people where they are at, an accessibility thing too, because like I am fully aware that the experience of coming down to Costa Rica and doing a vacation here is something that not everyone can afford, and in fact, most cannot. But to have the ability to participate, with all you need is like even just a phone, and internet connection, do surfing or yoga or cooking. So we have big ideas to continue adding to that. Right now we do have mostly yoga. I do cooking classes, and then Travis has already recorded some of the first surf series. And we're just going to continue adding to that library, responsible business, and environmental like awareness while traveling or even at home. And we'd like to pull from our networks too. Like we're not experts in every single one of these aspects, but we have really cool networks now through like B Corp and 1% for the Planet and stuff. So to have some content available for people.
The really interesting thing that I mean, we've had a few really great in-depth conversations about business and about things that have happened. And I think one of the surprising things for me anyway is, I've been talking a lot with our clients and with people in our network about discovering the root of the value that you bring to the people the community, the network that you serve, right? Because it's often not so hardwired and tied to the tools that you use to do whatever that thing is. And so many people get really wrapped up in the tools, like I'm a, there's one example with a jiu-jitsu academy in Hamilton. And I remember talking to them early on in the pandemic. They said, well, our academy is closed down. We can't operate anymore. So that's it. And I had that conversation with them initially to say, well, your value isn't tied to four walls, a roof, and a mat on the floor. Your value is tied to building people's self-esteem and confidence, educating, bringing community together, like a whole host of other things. And I've had this conversation with so many of our clients when the pandemic happened, just to take that time and take that opportunity really to dig deep and discover what is at the core or the root of the value that you bring to your community. And this is something that you and the Bodhi team did very naturally, which is so super rare to see. But I think the transition, the recognition, the awareness that you had, when things started happening, and then the commitment to work through this, and then mother being necessity being the mother of invention, driving you towards saying, okay, well, how do we're not inventing this, but we're kind of reinventing ourselves a little bit. I think that's wonderful.
Totally. And honestly, like, I do think that it was driven by this real urgency of the decision, because, in all honesty, I think we could have let the whole staff go and probably coasted on what we had if it had just been the ownership that stayed on board, right? That would have been an option. That could have been a way to do it. But our decision, which was, it felt not risky because we didn't see another way, but it felt like a weight, like this is going to be a lot. This is going to be a lot, but we're making that commitment. And then that opened all of these doors. Okay, how are we going to do it? And a lot of it was not, like you said, the value thing. Like we started thinking like, okay, what are the things that we do here at Bodhi? Like, what are the things that people kind of like us or keep coming back? Because we have a really high retention rate. We've got a lot of people that come back. We have a return guest right now. We have a one coming next week. Almost every single week. Yeah. We have return guests, right? So it's like, what are they coming for? Is it just that they come down here to surf and do yoga and be in the tropics? That's a part of it, but it's not the whole thing. It's the community component. So we started doing these social hours at the beginning before everyone got zoomed out, where we'd invited Bodhi guests to just come and everyone did a high low ha. We'd have drinks together. We'd be like, okay, everyone cook something from the Bodhi cookbook. We'll all share this together, stuff like that, that it wasn't a paid thing. It was just more of kind of how do we just maintain our little thing that we have here, which is the thing. That's the whole point that we do all this, Yeah. Those moments. And we were heartbroken to think that we'd had a pretty good season up to that point, but our season would have gone, into the fall, right? And we were at the beginning, it might've been oh, we're really tired and it's kind of cool to be here with no guests, but it got kind of sad at a certain point. We missed our guests, we missed having them. That's our thing. We've been doing it for so long, so we're okay, what are the things that we could do to bring them here without actually having them come here,
Yeah.
And it was also so sad to think about people just independently struggling, all over. I hated that thought. That was what was keeping me up at night too, knowing we were very lucky. We were here, we were together, and there was a lot of us, but yeah, thinking people were by themselves, that part just made me really sad.
Yeah. There's a sort of, I don't know if you want to call it an ideology or that kind of thing in business now that's been around for quite a while. It's been popularized by Simon Sinek about knowing your why, and it's funny because so many people talk about it, and I feel like to some degree people understand what that means. For a lot of people, maybe it's just sort of noise or business speak or trendy or whatever. But I feel like this is a really great example of why having such a deep connection to why you do things and why you're in this in the first place is so critical. Because obviously, you and the Bodhi team have a very deep connection to why you do things. It's not just a business. It's not a, well, we want to do this so that we can, afford to live and pay our bills and make money and whatever. No, there's a much deeper sense of purpose, and there's a deep tie to that, which is incredible. But the thing, this is a really great example to shine a light on, to say, like, this is why you should know that, because it's something that you invest in, to think about and think deeply about and understand yourself. Then, in times of crisis or hardship, that becomes a tool to serve you and support you. And I don't know how many people really see it that way. They think, okay, well, they're thinking the woo-woo side of things, like, okay, well, what's my why? I'm gonna dig deep into my heart and figure out whatever. It's like, well, yeah, do that, because when shit is hitting the fan and life sucks and things are hard and you're the last person to take a paycheck, and that's been going on for 4 months, 5 months, 6, whatever. That's the thing that's going to be the driver for this is what's really important. I need to keep doing this because I need to serve my community, or I need to improve the environment, or whatever it is that's driving you. That the core of that is what's going to drive you to reinvent things. It's going to drive you to find those opportunities and reinvent yourself and find new ways to make sure that mission keeps moving forward.
100%.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested too by, I'm circling around a lot of thoughts right now based on some of the past couple of comments, but yeah, the idea of why, and the idea of also purpose too, and just having that purpose. And I'm interested in how you translated that into, say, the cookbook example, which, when I asked, what were you particularly proud of? The cookbook didn't even come up, and then it comes up, and I'm just like, why did you not mention that? That is so cool.
Well, that was the how. The cookbook was actually the how, right? And I am proud of the cookbook, definitely, but that was just one way to reach this bigger goal, right? Which was the team.
Yeah.
I think going back to the proud, like the way that another way that I'm proud, I think it's also just like the human element of all of this, because it was like I mentioned, like every donation because that was one of the other things that we did it was just like travel vouchers, pay now, come later, come whenever. And we understood that wasn't going to be like new people, but like for our people that were, basically financially able to do it and knew that they wanted to come back eventually, like help us just get to that point where you can come back, right? But we'd like call every individual donor, like me, Travis Pilar, sitting on the couch and just like old school, because at this point we had time to do it. There was a real like campy feeling about that. But yeah, like this human connection, I think that was, to me, I think for like not just Bodhi, but like for a lot of businesses, a lot of people that like we all finally had time to like talk. Like I talked to like my aunts and uncles that I've never had, phone conversations with, for example. And I restarted, personally with my high school girlfriends, like, and that like has persisted, we'd all been in touch, but we have a now real like cohesive group and we chat in it every single day. So, those were the kinds of things. I was like, none of this other stuff necessarily matters. Like all the little details, but I think if we can find ways to continue to connect, make people feel good, I think that's one thing that we at Bodhi all like to do. Like obviously we're in hospitality, so that's part of it, but like make people feel good, taken care of, cared for, that's been more important.
Yeah. No, that's fantastic.
Ryan, did you want to continue on that thought? I had something else, but I don't want to.
You go ahead.
Okay.
There's a couple things. It's like Three Stooges coming through the door, like thoughts.
Yeah, it's all good. So this is something that has been sort of rolling around in my thoughts more recently, being that things are starting to open up a little bit, and people are starting to get vaccinated. Things are starting to become a little bit more safe, and people are obviously on different sides of this conversation right now about okay, things are going to go back to normal, and things are never going to go back to the way they were before. And I'm sort of in that camp right now. I feel like things there's a pre-pandemic and there's a post-pandemic world, and that's not necessarily all bad. Like, certainly we want to be sensitive to the fact that this is horrific for so many people, but we also want to take good wherever we can, right? And you, Adrianne, you talked specifically about the human element and community support, and how that changed so dramatically as a result of the pandemic. You really felt people rally around each other, and we saw this, certainly a lot in our community in Hamilton, where businesses were collaborating with each other, and communities were coming out in full support of those businesses and people who've supported them for many years. So for me, I'm scared right now, because I'm not scared of the pandemic. I'm scared that too many people are going to lose the amazing things that they pulled out of this when it goes back to normal. So my question to you is, obviously, I mean, you've been able to identify all these wonderful changes with you and your team, and things that you've been able to turn into a positive. Like, if you were to talk to somebody else, or like in this medium right now, how do you explain to people how to identify those positive things, and how do we make sure that we don't lose them?
I mean, there's a lot of ways to answer this. I'm going to speak more to do with my industry, because if that's okay. Because
absolutely.
Travel and tourism is a massive industry. I've recently been researching a lot of stats on it. If I might have told you about this, Brad, but like, if it were a country, travel as an industry, it would have the 10th highest GDP in the world. It employs 1 billion people around the world. It's a truly global industry. And it is also, it has secondary effects to many more than that, many more people than 1 billion. So it's huge, right? Huge. Mm-hmm. And it's not a great industry, historically. It has been very environmentally detrimental. And I personally believe that the pandemic has its roots in environmental degradation. The fact that we as humans have really just like basically blasted our way into every wild corner of this earth, and like basically unleashed things that we can't tolerate, right? And then there's so many of us, exactly, and there's so many of us now. Overpopulation is a big issue, and the way we travel, and I don't know if you guys felt this, but I felt that like January, February, and up until March of 2020 were it was like we'd reached this like pinnacle of human movement and action, and people were making money, and it was like extra,
Yeah.
And so it was, I think, even more like, it felt really like very drastic when the pandemic started, because we kind of went from like here to here, like really fast, like, I don't know how the pandemic of 1918 felt, but I have this feeling that it probably didn't feel as drastic from like one day to the next, because of like the truly global nature of our world now, and technology and all that. But anyways, yeah. So, the pandemic, I think, is environmental, or in origin, and the fact that like, travel is very, environmentally unfriendly. It's also, been known to sort of crush or displace, local populations. It's culturally very abrasive often, and whatever. There's just a lot of negative ramifications. Also not an industry that has a whole lot of oversight. Any hotel, any tour operator can be like, we're green, and there's no one to say otherwise. Who follows up with that, or we're culturally.
Well, a lot of the organizations that do certification for that kind of thing are corrupt, and
exactly. There's a lot.
Like dolphin free and all that.
Yeah. There are a lot of certifications that are BS. And again, like, there's just no oversight, and there's so many of them. It's very confusing. I get it that it's confusing for the consumer as well. My thinking is that, and what I'm seeing, and what I truly believe, is that we as humans are not going to stop moving, just like we're not going to stop consuming, because these are things that are in our nature, right? So how, for me, the question becomes, like, this was a wake-up call in some ways. And if I hope that the people that are like really listening and rising to the moment, I hope that there are enough of those people and organizations and movements, whatever, because there are changes that can be made. There are changes that can be made to make all of these things just more functional for everyone, for the environment, for all the various stakeholders, for the communities, whatever, right? And so I hope, and it's a hope, right? We here at Bodhi try to follow that up with action. That's not just affecting ourselves, but hopefully affecting other people or other orgs as well. But that, this great pause can be a moment to really assess, to really have assessed one's own trajectory and, questioning those whys and figuring out a way to do things better, because ultimately, like what we saw at Bodhi was like, we weren't as sustainable as we thought we were. Sustainable being the word, not even environmentally, but generally, like if
self-sustaining
exactly, like if a simple border closure, not simple, but I didn't think it could happen. It did, if that thing can shut down our business model, then maybe our business model isn't as good as we thought it was, like we have to be resilient to the fact that we are coming to a time in human history where I do believe it's a reckoning period of the things that have happened thus far collectively that we've all had a part in, whether that's environmental, these events that we're seeing, over here is 48 degrees Celsius and now burning up, and over here is like raining and flooded, and if you pay attention, these things are happening much more frequently, right? To the point where, this could be the new normal, right? This could be, and it could get worse. So like, how are we all individually and organizations and as governments and as the private sector, like how are we all becoming more resilient and being able to continue to function, operate, thrive, all of those things, so it's again, there's no easy answers, but I do think that this could have been like a real preview as to what we do need to do to go forward,
That's right. Yeah. I wonder too, Brad, you were talking about like how you're afraid that things will be lost. And it's funny because there is this sort of process where we see that, pre-pandemic, there's people being loud. Pre-pandemic, you see there is a growing consciousness around the impact of travel, whether that's over tourism in specific destinations, the environmental impact of travel. The irony I found too, leading up to the pandemic, one of the things I went to in January 2020 was like a sustainability and travel conference that was in Vancouver. And then it was almost as though the pandemic kind of forced a definitive like sustainability on travel by having no travel during the pandemic. And then, Canadian wise, people began to explore your backyard a bit more, which also then helps filter out to kind of communities, say outside of the GTA, where you wouldn't necessarily see that economy filtering. So I wonder, you'd kind of touched on, Adrianne, how you're kind of reevaluating things coming out of that, and especially with the business and in travel as an industry, and with a business that really does depend on people coming to you from outside of Costa Rica to a certain extent. So what are you looking at changes to make coming back into it now that we're coming out of the pandemic and we've had this time to reevaluate and also judge maybe some of that more disingenuous focus on sustainability that was kind of being discussed prior to the pandemic?
Yeah, good question. And also, like, I do feel like this kind of slightly on topic, but a little off too, but I would be remiss if I didn't bring it up, because as we got back into it, like, we had a real moment where we're like, okay, there are people traveling again, and we want people to come here. So I guess kind of selfishly, right? But also we don't want to, like, is that responsible? Is that the right thing to do? Like, and so our approach, as always, was just like trying to be thoughtful and give information always, So like right now we have 10 or 12 blogs about COVID in Costa Rica, COVID Bodhi, Ultimate Guide, trying to take all the information as we were receiving it, being accurate and really up to date about what was going on in the country, and answering honestly when people ask, what's the situation there, Like we never wanted it to be like, come on, who cares, you know? And there are a lot of companies that did that, you know, And we were like, you know what, here's what we're going to do. We're going to, in terms of the health and safety, because that is the obviously the foremost goal, like we're going to follow the law, you know, we're going to, of the land, we're going to listen to the Ministry of Health and basically advise and it basically, you know, require our guests to follow these protocols as well while they're here. And be open and honest. And if people need, like we had a really flexible cancellation policy, don't feel comfortable coming, whatever, like we get it, you know. In some cases we, you know, we had to give money back. Like we didn't have to, because like it's written into our policy that we don't, but like we felt like that was the right thing to do, you know. Mm-hmm. We didn't want to make, because here's the thing, there's all types of people, right? And there's some people that genuinely are like, you know what, I'm going to risk it. Like I'm one of those people. Like I'm not too worried personally. I don't have kids. I'm not having contact with people, you know what I mean, that are at risk. So like for me to travel, I probably would have traveled at any point. I didn't, but I probably would have been okay too, taking all the protocols and all the precautions in the world. But there are people that are like, well, it's not right for them. So basically our philosophy is like, if it's right for you, we could be a good fit. You know, if you're okay to travel and you want to travel and you want to do this thing, we could be a good fit, and here's why, you know, because we do care, we're taking precautions and we're going to do everything that we can to make it a safe and pleasant experience for you. One of the things that we did do was create the pod offer, which didn't terribly take off, but it was basically like, you know what, we can have 10 people here, like we can fit 10 people here, utilizing all our space. We said, if we can get 4 people, if you can bring a group of 4 down, your own bubble, we were thinking a family, right? Or a group of friends or 2 couples, just people that are already in each other's bubbles back home, like come together and you have the whole lodge to yourself. We're not going to charge you that extra 6 people, like you just paid the 4, the regular, and just you'll have the whole lodge to yourself. Just things like this that are kind of like, okay, you know, we're going to be as responsible as we can be. We're going to be as forthright as we can be, and blah, 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 you know? So that was one thing that we did in the interim. And then generally, like I was mentioning, this membership program, like for us, it was kind of like, yes, we have our thing. And our business model was flawed, I think, in that we had our big thing, which are like multi-thousand often, or at least into the $1,000 USD week-long vacation packages. Or we have a surf, you know, or yoga classes, which you have to be here for, or nothing. Those are the only things we can offer you. So, you know, and it was funny because over the years, we kind of looked at like, what could we, like how-to guides and that things, these are not things that people like really need necessarily or want to pay for. So we actually, like, I think dug more into that whole idea of like, okay, in terms of acquisition too, and getting your name out there, we didn't want to necessarily go into the apparel industry. We may be now, but for the moment, you know, at that time we were like, we don't want to create more and more things in this planet. Like that's going against our ethos too. But this idea that we've had a lot of like young and really motivated content creators coming down, videographers, photographers, writers, etc. So utilizing their skill sets to kind of take what we're doing and put it out there in bits and pieces, in long courses, you know.
The Bodhi Wave is a great example of that.
The Bodhi Wave, yeah, we had this documentary that's more to do with like responsible business. That's the thing. Like, I think ultimately, like what we do well is we inspire people to do things differently, to live, you know, lower impact lifestyles, to, you know, learn about responsibility in terms of consumption or choosing businesses or just your at home, you know, habits. So we're like, we can continue doing that. We can do that, you know. Maybe people hear about us and maybe when it's safe again, they come visit us as well. And that's awesome, you know. But in the meantime, like we have a lot more to offer than just this like little thing that we do, which is the vacation experience. So basically, and for me too, like with all the social justice, you know, movements that have been happening across the world, really, like it did always bug me, just like the whole environmental part bugged me too. Like, okay, here we are, the surf and yoga camp, yet we require people to fly to us. We sort of short-term solution that with, you know, offsetting people's flights for them. And that was a part of the vacation experience. We've been doing that since 2018, I think. And that was kind of avant-garde at the time. We went carbon neutral and have been doing that since 2019. But anyways, but this whole thing was like, yeah, socially, like I feel bad. Like we have a certain kind of clientele that in the how they look and the money they make and where they live, where they're coming from, etc. Like we're not incredibly accessible. We've tried to mitigate that by having, you know, contests or things that are more for, where a vacation could be given for
or subsidized or something,
or whatever. So we've tried to do it like that, but it still wasn't, but I do think that, and again, like, of course, doing an online course is never going to be the same as coming down, but also, it's something, right? It's something that we can do. I think there is a point in business where you realize you can't be everything for everyone. You can't do everything. What can you do? Choose a few things, do them well, try to make them as inclusive as possible. So basically that's what we're attempting to do with this new branch of the business, which is the online component.
Awesome. Oh, that's super interesting.
So I just want to chime in for a second. We're at the top of the hour. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I feel like I have like, Ryan too, just, we have like 100,000 questions rolling around in our head. I feel like I could spend a whole day just diving into parallels between surfing and yoga and business and life,
So many.
There's so much in that. But yeah, I wanted to give it to Ryan first to see if, Ryan, you had any final questions or thoughts or anything like that before we throw it over to Adrianne.
No, it's just been a very interesting conversation and really interesting to zero in kind of on of some of the maybe business books or books I've read across the past couple of years too, that between the Simon Sinek idea of the why or the good to great idea of the hedgehog or things like that core purpose. So it's interesting to hear how you use that to realign yourself during times like this, and specifically in an industry that was so, and is, so drastically affected by the pandemic.
I think that's the point of values, right? They're to guide you in moments of strife. And so I think maybe that's a good takeaway. Like if you can identify those values, your purpose, and then actually like utilize the time frame to put it creatively into action.
Yeah.
And
you've won.
The strength and clarity and dedication that you have to those values are going to sort of inversely affect how well they support you during times of crisis, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
And we'll see. I mean, as for us and hopefully with other, businesses and individuals like that will see, if you've been planting seeds during this time frame, maybe it wasn't the time for them to take off because it was a really tough time and continues to be, but maybe down the line, these seeds that we have planted will turn into something really, really of note, really important and coming from a very interesting time as well. I do think, at least in terms of Bodhi, we are already seeing some of that happening, right now. So
yeah, absolutely. Adrianne, I wanted to send it back to you if you had any other anything that we missed or anything that you felt you wanted to talk about, or any final thoughts.
Well, as I was telling you, I'm I can also talk for like literally the rest of the day, but
yeah, you and I are cut from the same cloth.
I know, totally right. But yeah, no, I think that I think the last thing I said was probably how I would want to leave it, just the continue planting the seeds and letting your values like sort of guide you.
There's always something we can be doing. There's,
exactly.
It's
even with no resources.
It kind of goes back to that, one foot in front of the other, or that concept of failure thing as well. Like, failure only happens when you decide it happens,
Totally.
If you don't stop, if you keep finding a way, if you keep, putting an effort forward and trying things, and, like you were saying that the pod idea, you were saying it didn't really take off the way that you had hoped to take off, but that was one of, a plethora of different ideas that you guys were throwing out there and trying. And then the cookbook is one that, skyrockets and surprises everybody, and it's kind of that, like you miss 100% of the shots you don't take kind of thing. So if you're hitting adversity, if you're hitting challenges in your business, just keep trying things, keep active. And I think, one other thing I was going to mention earlier, and again, I want to be considerate of everybody's time, but no, did I lose it? Did I lose it?
Three Stooges coming through the door.
Oh my goodness gracious. Yeah, I lost it. That's okay. You know what?
It's Thursday.
It's Thursday.
It's a day. It's a day of the week.
Adrianne, I wanted to thank you so much for coming on and doing this session with us. We really appreciate it.
I think it's awesome what you guys are doing too. Talking about seeds being planted. These are the kinds of things that are so awesome to see coming out in all the different little spaces in which they exist. You know, there's so many people that are benefiting from this kind of, even if it's just the three of us, you know what I mean? Like I feel having these conversations, if they just for no other good reason to have good questions asked, and it gets you thinking.
Well, it's like we talk about, we relate abilities, you know, mental and spiritual, abilities to a muscle, right? So, you know, getting together and doing things like this, we're basically just working out together, you know, like we're in the gym, we're lifting weights together. You know, hopefully there are people out there who are inspired to come by and pick up some kettlebells, or, you know, do the same thing and do those mental Olympics, right?
Totally.
Yeah. Very cool.
Awesome,
Adrianne, thank you.
Yes.
You're awesome. Your whole team is awesome. I'm really grateful to know you and your team, and to be a part of this community here.
We're glad to have you.
Thank you.
Ryan, come visit.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah.
All right.
So. I know. Yeah. Ryan and Abby, I'm sure will be here sooner than later. And Ryan, congratulations on being back in the space. I'm so happy for you guys. You know, the CoMotion team is like a second family to me, and I appreciate you guys. And I'm really happy that you're back in the space, the beautiful space that you guys have built.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. We hope to be down in both your spaces soon. So
always welcome.
We'll get some color on you, Ryan.
It'll reflect. The sun will end up with a burn because of me.
Very cool. All right.
Okay.
So I just wanted to let everybody that's watching know that after this episode, we have an upcoming episode with a good friend, Perry Gladstone, who has lived in Costa Rica for, I believe, studied the last 15 years and has started many charitable organizations and run a lot of businesses in his lifetime. And he just recently, him and I did the Passing Ships in the Night. So I came down here and he went back up to Toronto. So we're going to have him chiming in on a session coming up. So stay tuned for that coming out in the coming weeks. And we're excited to talk about him. And thank you for watching. And we hope this is helpful. We'll see you guys next time.
Great. Thank you very much.